take your questions.
Is it a virus?
We don't know.
How does it spread? Is it airborne?
Airborne is a possibility. We don't know.
Is this an international health hazard or a military concern?
Both.
Are these people alive or dead?
We don't know.
This is not about retribution. This matters going forward. We're in a live exercise here. We're in a live exercise here.
I've got one that can see.
Germany is home to the oldest virological institution in the world. Reims was founded in 1910 to research foot and mouth disease, but during World War II, it became ground zero for Hitler's biowarfare program. Reims was run by scientist Erich Traub, who reported directly to Heinrich Himmler, who reported directly to Hitler. Traub experimented with unique forms of biological warfare. He specialized in biting and stinging insects. He discovered that if you infect beetles and ticks with a deadly disease, you can drop them on enemy troops and their food supplies. You can devastate an entire army without firing a single shot. Ticks were considered an ideal weapon for biological warfare. They're small, making them hard to detect. They're resilient, making them hard to kill. And they feed on human blood, making them motivated to spread disease.
The tick is the perfect germ vector, which is why it has long been fancied as a germ weapon by early biowarriors, from Nazi Germany and the Empire of Japan to the Soviet Union and the United States.
After the war, there was no Nazi Germany. There was no Empire of Japan. But the Soviet Union and the United States were still very interested in using poison ticks in warfare, except now they would be used on each other. So now the two allies became enemies, and competition for German technology was fierce. The United States launched Operation Paperclip, a secret program that recruited German scientists, engineers, and technicians. The U.S. gave German scientists a choice. Work for us, and your war crimes are forgiven. Not a difficult decision for most. Even if German scientists refused to work for the U.S., they could still find themselves swept up in Operation Osoaviakim. This was the Soviet counterpart to Operation Paperclip, but where the U.S. gave scientists a choice, the Soviets took them by force. Erich Traub was one of the scientists forced to work for the Soviets from his lab on Reims Island. But in 1948, British intelligence got him out and brought him to the States. Soon, he was working at Fort Detrick, the Army's biological warfare headquarters. And based on the design of Traub's Island in Germany, the United States built their own lab off the coast of New York. So the Plum Island Animal Disease Laboratory opened its doors in 1954.
A source who worked on Plum Island in the 1950s recalls that animal handlers and a scientist released ticks outdoors on the island. They called him the Nazi scientist. In 1951, they were inoculating these ticks.
It would take years before residents in the area would learn what was happening on Plum Island. And when locals found out, tensions were high. Nobody wanted a bioweapons lab in their backyard. Moral issues aside, what if some disease made it to the mainland? After all, about 10 million people live within 100 miles of the island. A lab leak would be catastrophic. But even when the government finally acknowledged the facility, they said that one, it wasn't researching bioweapons, and two, there's no way anything could escape the island. But here's the thing. Those were both lies.
This animal facility, since 1954, when it was actually inaugurated as a biological warfare facility by Nazi Germany's top warfare officer that we secretly imported to the United States. The goal was germ warfare.
Is that true? It really was a Nazi? A Nazi ran the place? An ex-Nazi?
Yeah, his name was Erich Traub. We can find him in the depths of the National Archives and Record Administration, where I found him.
In 1971, a mysterious virus began decimating Cuba's pig population, threatening a major food source. Within 2 years, over 500,000 pigs had died or been slaughtered. The cause was African swine fever, a highly contagious and usually fatal virus. This was the first and only outbreak of swine fever in the Western Hemisphere. As a result of the epidemic, Cuba was forced to slaughter every pig on the island. How African swine flu got onto the island was a mystery. Well, a mystery to everyone except the Cubans. The Cuban government blamed the United States, specifically the CIA. After all, Operation Mongoose was well known to the Cubans. This was a covert operation initiated by the CIA in the early 1960s. Its primary objective was to remove Fidel Castro from power, and although they were never implemented, biological weapons were a part of this plan. The CIA had planned to spray botulinum toxin on the island. The justification for this is that it would save the lives of thousands of American soldiers. Cuban civilians wouldn't be so lucky. Botulinum toxin is one of the most potent toxins on Earth. Estimates put the casualty count at somewhere between 1 and 2% of the Cuban civilian population. We're talking hundreds of thousands dead. Now, luckily, Operation Mongoose ended and this never came to pass. But when a disease landed on Cuba out of nowhere, all signs pointed to the CIA. In 1977, Long Island newspaper Newsday reported 2 Cuban exiles admitted they were part of the plot. They said in early 1971, they were given the virus at Fort Gulick in Panama. They then traveled to Navassa Island near Cuba and smuggled the virus to the island. Now, there is proof that the U.S. Navy was on Navassa Island in early 1971, but they claim this was a scientific mission, though the science they were researching was looking for animal diseases that could jump to humans. Now, that might be a coincidence, but there's only one place in the Western Hemisphere that has live African swine flu. That's Plum Island. And the way African swine flu is transmitted? Through ticks. This was the exact method of biological attack that Eric Traub specialized in. Of course, the CIA denied all of this, and still does, but it has to.
Why does the CIA have to deny this?
Well, this attack happened in 1971. President Richard Nixon ordered all bioweapon research to stop in 1969. So there's no way the CIA could have been involved, right?
Oh, I know where this is going.
But in 1975, a congressional report revealed that the CIA continued to maintain a stockpile of biological weapons, lots of them, in violation of the order.
The CIA doesn't like to follow orders.
No.
So let's sum it up for you, folks. Let me pause right here. Basically, a bunch of Nazis were given immunity, brought to America and given immunity, and then given access to all kinds of biological weapon labs and everything that they built, and then started turning diseases loose on people as weapons across the world. And they've been doing it ever since, and the same damn Nazis are doing it now. Okay, Ukraine is a bunch of Nazis. Your Schwab up here and his cronies, they're all Nazis. The people running our government, called federal government, that's all Nazis. What we have is a Nazi problem, folks. We didn't kill them. We didn't get rid of them. They scattered, and we brought them all over the world. We brought them here, and we put them in high-ranking positions, and now they rule the fucking world again. Here we are, folks. We created this problem, and the United States citizens need to extinguish the problem they created. It is up to us to destroy the damn Nazis before they destroy the damn world again. Okay? If we're not going to do that, we're all guilty.
We don't. And this was a terrifying prospect. Who is in charge of these dangerous bioweapons? With no oversight, there's a high risk that one of these diseases could infect the population and we'd never see it coming. Turns out, that's exactly what happened. In 1975, Ronnie was working a security detail for a warehouse in Connecticut. During his shift, he walked the building, the parking lot, and the fence around the property. During one of his rounds, he felt a pinch on his ankle. He was breaking in a new pair of boots, and he knew he'd spend the next few nights nursing sore feet. When he got home, the first thing he did was strip off those damn boots, and sure enough, he had a small red welt on his ankle. When he woke up the next morning, the small red welt had ballooned into a painful blister shaped like a bullseye. When he rubbed it, he felt a bump. He looked more closely. The bump was a bug, and it was alive. Ronnie grabbed a pair of tweezers, and when he pulled the bug out, it broke apart. A few days later, his joints started to ache and he felt sick. He thought he had caught the flu, but it wasn't the flu. In 1975, the small town of Old Lyme, Connecticut experienced an outbreak of a devastating new disease. Some people got rashes, some ran high fevers, others had painful swollen joints. Some people had all these symptoms, as well as headaches, dizziness, and shortness of breath. In severe cases, people were becoming delusional, experiencing psychosis and becoming paralyzed. At first, doctors misdiagnosed the condition as a type of arthritis. They named it Lyme arthritis after the town that had the first outbreak. 2 years later, scientists finally connected Lyme arthritis to the bite of a deer tick. A type of single-cell bacteria called Borrelia was to blame for what's now known as Lyme disease. As the reports of symptoms came in, these cases were placed on a map. A disturbing picture started to appear. Ground zero was Plum Island. This was another disease spread by ticks. This also has Eric Traub's fingerprints all over it. But was the outbreak an accident? Or is the government conducting a test on the population without their knowledge?